All right, let's take a look at propofol now and how it falls under the law. Mike Barnes joins us. He's an attorney and drug policy advisor joining us from Washington, D.C. Mike, great to have you on the program.
Thanks for having me.
How about this, Mike? Let's talk about propofol. And again, I've got these 4 huge jugs in front of me, and that's how much Conrad Murray is ordering. How is this stuff regulated? I mean, because it seems like it's a large amount. Doctors, they don't have to give like a reason why they're ordering all this stuff?
Well, certainly when a pharmacist would ship these sorts of medications to a practice, a medical practice, it would be under the assumption, if not the express word, that the medications would be for multiple patients. And as the anesthesiologist mentioned, it would be thousands of cases that would be necessary to use that volume of propofol. But in this case, it's my understanding that Conrad Murray had indicated directly and actually expressly told the pharmacist that this was for his clinic, a cardiologist clinic in the Los Angeles area. And so that's why I don't think that there's been any significant problem associated with criminal charges related to the pharmacist himself.
How about Dr. Conrad Murray apparently lying about that? That's a problem, right?
I think it certainly would be, and I'm curious as to whether or not there will be any sort of separate charges related to the inappropriate use of these medications, but I would doubt that at this late stage there ever would be, and I would think that if they were, they would be brought into this particular case. But it does appear to me that there might have been some sort of fraudulent behavior in indicating either expressly or even just by behaviors and not disclosing that these medications were not indeed for an entire clinic over the course of multiple weeks or months of time, but rather just for one particular patient.
Is Dr. Spies still with us?
I am still here, yes.
What's the largest, have you ever ordered propofol? And if so, what was the largest shipment you ever made?
Well, I don't order it. Our hospital purchasing orders it, so I never personally order it. I do order it in the operating rooms from the hospital pharmacy, and that's just on an individual case basis, and I've never asked for more than 2 vials, 2 100cc vials.
Do you think if we shipped you 4 gallons, you'd be okay for a while?
No, I don't think I'd like to be known receiving 4 gallons of propofol.
Yeah, and Mike, that's the whole thing here. I mean, and I guess this is the type of expert testimony that this jury's got to hear, because, you know, we don't know anything about this stuff. You know, if you know, before this case, if you told me, 4 gallons of the stuff, I said, all right, I have no idea. Is that a lot? Is that a little? I have no clue about this. So I think it's going to be pretty important during this trial to educate this jury the way we're trying to educate our viewers today about propofol and what it's really all about here.
That's right, and the most interesting part of this is that the federal government hasn't scheduled the medication propofol as a controlled substance because it really doesn't have a significant history of abuse. I mean, it is such a dangerous medication that, as the anesthesiologist mentioned, it can only be used in these appropriate settings in basically a hospital with constant care, that people don't even dare to abuse it. So,
well, I've heard, I've heard that there are some medical students and doctors that have long shifts that have been using it, and it may be an issue there. So maybe it's something our government needs to look at. But I appreciate your time, gentlemen. Mike Barnes, Dr. Spies, I'm sure we'll be speaking again during the course of this case.
Great.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, no, you're not going anywhere. I'm sorry. My bad. That's my fault. Error on the anchor. You guys are going to stick around to answer some questions. Folks at home, you got questions about drugs and Michael Jackson's death, give us a call. I'm going to keep the doctor and the lawyer here. Welcome back to In Session, taking your phone calls, Juror 13, and you got questions. We got Dr. Spies with us and Mike Barnes, attorney and doctor, talking about propofol. 4 gallons is what was ordered by Dr. Conrad Murray. Unbelievable. All right, let's get to those phone lines. Becky's in California. Good afternoon, Becky.
Hi, Vinny. So here's my question. Is there ever a time when propofol would be appropriate for use in a private home setting? I mean, I know that you can use morphine for terminally ill patients if they've got nursing care, etc. But would there ever be an appropriate use for propofol in a home?
Great question, Becky. Dr. Spies.
I don't think so. I've done a lot of soul searching and thinking about this. There's never been anything published in the medical literature to suggest that that would be okay, or in a setting where that would be the right thing to do. You can opinion that in a terminal illness situation it could relieve pain and suffering, but it's not been utilized for that. And the only places it's been published and utilized in out of hospital settings are either in suicide or homicide cases. So we clearly don't have any established medical view that that could be the right thing to do ever.
Thanks for the call, Becky. Let's go to Texas and Mark. Good afternoon, Mark.
Hi, Benny.
How you doing, Mark?
Oh, I'm doing good. How about you?
Not too bad. Getting ready for this big trial. Your thoughts? You have a comment or question today?
Yeah, I'm only 3 years older than Michael, and I've been on pain medication for like 5 years for my back. It is very addicting, and I would love to know who introduced propofol to Michael, and how long had he been using it?
That's a great question, Mark. And, you know, this is something that perhaps the defense wants to get into at trial. And I've seen interviews with folks who said he's been doing it for several years, that had done it with him on the road in the past. And I guess the real issue here for Michael Jackson is was he addicted to propofol? Is this something that you could get addicted to, Dr. Spees?
I think you can certainly get addicted to it in terms of a psychological addiction. If you have troubles falling asleep, if you've got a great deal of anxiety disorders, and you try it once or twice and you manage to get to sleep, you can see why you could psychologically build up a need and a desire for it. I don't think there's anything in our medical literature to suggest that you can get quote-unquote hooked on it as you can on a narcotic, in terms of a physical dependency that if you don't have it, you have a physical withdrawal symptom.
Mike Barnes, and could that be one of the reasons, Mike, that, you know, it's looked at differently as propofol than narcotics? I mean, it's just, I guess the way the government looks at it, the way they decide what to do about it, how to regulate it, becomes a little bit different.
It is very different because it is only to be used in these types of surgical settings with the appropriate equipment and with the appropriate medical professionals there. But I also wanted to point out a really important distinction that we're going to have to recognize through the course of this trial, and that's the difference between dependence, which is typically a medically oriented term, versus addiction, which is more behaviorally oriented. Dependence could be someone who just needs a medication in order to be able to continue functioning appropriately. And it might be the case that Michael Jackson was dependent on anti-anxiety medications. But addiction indicates that you've got these behaviors that are problematic, and no matter what the consequences are, you're not stopping. And I think that's not the case here with Michael Jackson, at least not in this context.
Thomas is in Washington, D.C. today. Good afternoon, Thomas.
Good afternoon, Vinny.
You have a question?
Yes, I do. I'm 62 years old, and I take a myriad of medications. And every time I pick my meds up, I get a barrage of information that comes with it on how to take it, and contradictions and interactions. Don't these doctors who pick up these medications, narcotics, get the same information on how to distribute them? And I had to add to that, I saw the milk containers on your desk. Doesn't the doctor have to give some accounting as to how all that propofol has been distributed to each individual patient over a certain period of time? And
that's a great question. Let's start there. Dr. Spees, do you have to account for all your use of whatever propofol, say, you order from the hospital?
Absolutely. We have to account for it, and it has to show up on medical records that it's been utilized.
All right. And Mike, your thoughts?
Well, I think that's a major distinction between a prescription medication and a prescription medication that is a controlled substance. The requirements are much greater for controlled substances in that you've got affirmative reporting requirements versus record-keeping requirements for just a prescription medication that is not a controlled substance. So there is a slight distinction, and that's why I think the DEA is now considering making propofol a controlled substance, but that has not occurred yet.
All right, Dr. Speece, Mike Barnes, really do. Now, this is actually my goodbye to you, but I'll thank you again. I really do appreciate your time, gentlemen. Great, great insight into all of this. Now,